Goemon's training consists of meditation under a waterfall, surviving and cutting ice in the Arctic tundra, and practice walking down a runway 1,000 times every single day. Welcome back to another Lupin discussion. My name is Musical Joker, and today we're talking about episode 16, Samurai Collection, a Goemon-centric episode. As we saw with last week's episode, Jigen had the spotlight, but now he's old news as we get to see Goemon become a model in a fashion show, which is already out of his element as we never see Goemon in any other clothing besides his own traditional samurai outfit. This episode is related to a woman named Gabi, who is a famous fashion designer who never sells her own designs. Sounds very counterproductive in the fashion industry, and I would clearly know that since I am a fashion connoisseur. Goemon gets involved with Gabi since she saved Goemon's life when he was cutting up big pieces of ice in the Arctic as part of his training, but was then beaten by his worst enemy, a whale. Goemon is very strong though, being out in the winter cold in sandals, even though I can wear a whole winter coat and boots and still be freezing in this winter weather. Gabi is another girl that we saw during the season 2 teaser trailer and first episode of season 2, which further pushes out the whole women message amongst the season. My only thought so far is though, aside from the whole episodic meeting so far, is there any other real purpose to serve with these women making any appearances? I say this a lot, but only time will tell. Maybe they're all the key to finding Tomoe, as aside from flashbacks, we haven't seen Tomoe just yet. Forgetting about Tomoe for a moment, Goemon is now strutting his stuff since he's deciding to repay his debt to her from the earlier whale incident by being in her latest fashion show, which she hounds him on. Why? Because Goemon is always so awkward with anything that isn't sword fighting, training, or making soba for the gang. It is a refreshing pace to see our naive boy Goemon to take on new things and try his damn hardest at it too, especially when it is paying back a debt. In the meantime, we do see Lupin and Fujiko plot together to steal some clothes from the famous Gabi clothing line. Also, Lupin can go ahead and get some special time with Fujiko. I mean, this is just like Lupin, and it is funny to see him in an antagonistic side in this episode, as Lupin and Goemon are on opposite sides here. This doesn't happen as often, since originally Lupin and Goemon are originally enemies turned into professional friends slash co-workers. So although this scenario is more comical, it just fleshes the gang out and show how dynamic they are, as they never always see eye to eye and will do whatever they want to get their way. We also see snippets of Yara and Zenigata being around trying to find Lupin as always. They play an extremely minor role in this episode, but they're here to remind you that they are not messing around with capturing Lupin. Throughout the time that Goemon trains, Gabi is struggling to handle her own feelings and how she longs for freedom with what she does, but yet feels so restricted. She longs to be like Goemon, who has always been a free spirit. Goemon has always done whatever he pleased and gone wherever he wanted to. Even as Lupin's friend and reliable ally, he doesn't always comes out to help him. At times, he refuses or he's just training. That is definitely one of his best qualities and why so many people find him so cool. More so, we see many different scenes of Goemon doing his exercise of 1,000 walks down the runway, as he took it literally and collapsed from exhaustion. You can call Goemon anything you want, but you can't say that he isn't dedicated, as Gabi mentioned that he didn't have to do all that, but this sweet boy wanted to make sure her fashion show went well. How adorable. After Goemon woke up from passing out, he took to the woods to test his quicker reflexes thanks to his training, which is really nice to see some sort of actual involvement with his own skills against all of the strutting he was doing. We won't ever see that applied to anything else in the future, but that still doesn't make it any less cool. As well as Goemon passing his sword over to Gabi, which may seem to provide further inspiration for her and also cements Goemon's trust in her. Also, during that time, we see Lupin and Fujiko just go over one last time the plan and their infiltration time to steal the clothing line from Gabi. Now, it is the night of the fashion show. Everyone seems to be busy, excluding Jigen. I guess fashion isn't much of Jigen's thing, despite him wearing all of this drip. But Zenigata and Yara appear, which makes Yara super excited about everything that's going on and all the famous people around, and it's nice and cute to actually see him get some time to shine, even just a little bit. We also see Fujiko and Lupin make their little entrance here, but incognito. As the show starts, to everyone's surprise, Goemon is dressed up in something besides his normal samurai gear and is walking down the runway like the king that he is. Although the clothes are different, they quite suit him. They look good. Before you can really enjoy much of the fashion show, they change styles. We see a familiar sounding camel show up within the desert theme of the show. Lupin, the wild card, never ceases to amaze me with how hilarious and how much of a pain he can become as he goes against Goemon during the show, even making fun of him or going with how he is dressed, like running around or barking like a dog or cross-dressing again and make it seem like Goemon is a big baby. Again, seeing more than just the serious side of Lupin, or the action side I guess, is definitely always a pleasure to see. It was really funny to see the polar opposites that are both Goemon and Lupin within this one scenario that both men are not really used to. And now suddenly we have a change in the fashion show thanks to Lupin and Goemon, since Gabi, who was inspired by Goemon during his training in the Arctic, really wanted to just change things up. Everyone is dressed up differently with splatters of paint, which goes to show that fashion is objective and that despite Gabi just doing whatever she felt free for once in a long time. Meanwhile, Lupin somehow managed to hide a giant flying vehicle backstage and used it to steal all of the clothes, while Fujiko used a drone to do the same thing and vacuum up people's clothes off of them. I don't know how that works, but should it be a thing? Goemon, on the other hand, attempts to stop both of them and doesn't have his sword during then, so he's just having a difficult time until Gabi shows up and decides to give him his sword back and just let him take care of the rest, which allows him to stop Lupin and gets him in his underwear, and then stops Fujiko and cuts up the drone, which bursts out basically a bunch of confetti because of all the clothes that were cut up in it. With this being done, the fashion show has come to a close. Gabi is happy, she feels free. Goemon is also super excited about what he was able to be a part of, and Goemon, who was able to repay a debt to a friend. And what does he do after that? He goes back and trains. Overall, this episode was a bit weird, but so fun. Out of the 2 episodes focusing on our main boys, I did like both equally. In this case, Goemon was out of his element and was doing something for the sake of someone else again. I feel like there is a lot of meaning behind his attention since we know how Goemon is overall. He is kind, caring, and yet so naive, but then he can also be so badass and stubborn sometimes. And like I mentioned, he could be a badass too, like Jigen in his own way, but without having to hurt someone in the process too. Speaking of which, this episode wasn't exactly action heavy either. It was always a nice change of pace to have something more with Lupin III that's not just action. Don't get me wrong, when we have action, it's great, it's fantastic. Have you seen Goemon and Lupin III, Goemon's blood spray? Exactly. But the writing focused on Goemon aside from him being an assassin this time, which doesn't happen all that frequently. And to be honest, that may be a big reason some people may find this episode weird or not entirely fulfilling, but I completely disagree on that. I think it did an amazing job just showcasing our boy here today, and I really liked it. But what did you think about this week's episode? Let me know down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, farewell.